In the 90s, Playmates Toys made the deepest line of Star Trek action figures in history. My name's Keith, and I'm a collector working towards owning all 284. I've been a Trek fan for almost 35 years, and most people are sick of me talking about it. But somehow I've convinced my old friend Mike to review them with me on Look at My Star Trek Toys! Wait for the whoosh! What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Look at My Star Trek Toys. I'm Keith Barney. That's Mike Indeglio. And here we are. We're on July 1st, 2023. And instead of doing a regular episode, we both decided that I think it's time to have a little fireside chat about what's going on with the Playmates figures here in 2023 and 2022. And just sort of like check in after Prodigy has been canceled by Paramount Plus, which is very disappointing to all of us. They haven't even aired season 2, which is almost done. They pulled season 1 off of the platform, which is I don't know what's going on with the stream. It's very confusing why that's financially a good idea for them. I get probably so they don't have to pay the writers a royalty.
And then maybe they're shopping it. There's been rumors that they're shopping it somewhere else, though that seems a silly thing for a streaming service that is consolidating all of its own IP on one place. Why would you then give it to someone else? Seems strange.
And yet, that's where a lot of things are at. It's confusing. I mean, like Westworld is off of HBO and now it's on like Pluto or some nonsense. And
yeah,
so
I guess if you could get more money having it be somewhere else because it's less overhead for you, I guess.
Well, I think so. I mean, they've already spent the money, so now they get somebody else to pay for it if they're not getting the subscriber value from it. And they've, and especially I think people are finding that they need the ads, right?
Yeah,
they need to make the ad revenue, so they're putting these things that used to be on an ad-free platform onto an ad platform, and that's where they can recoup some of the money. Anyway, although Paramount Plus has ads, so.
But Keith, this isn't a business podcast. So
it's 100% a business podcast today.
Okay, because I think the more important thing is, yes, we could speculate and try to rationalize and try to understand what they are doing. But truth be told, they haven't really explained it well in the press. At the end of the day, I think we can talk from how it's affecting end users. Look, I never watched it, but it's interesting that I can't now. And also, a lot of the feedback I've heard from has been, and especially from some of our patrons, has been from parents of children who really liked the show and were digging it and would be the market for toys, which is what we're going to talk about today. And it's just sad. It's sad. I can only imagine, I loved Transformers. I loved He-Man. A lot of the cartoons I watched growing up, G.I. Joe, they never got pulled directly off television before the next season.
Abruptly, with almost no warning. And my understanding of it is they actually even pulled the episodes early. Like they were supposed to be pulled at the end of the week and they got pulled early. I don't understand any of the purpose of that. So just to be upfront with everybody here, as we begin this episode, we have no new information. So this is just a discussion, some speculation, some history. I have reached out to Playmates for a little bit more clarity on what's going on. Are they going to finish the Prodigy line with the figures they had announced, the Janeway and the Rock Dog? I don't know. I have not heard back. We're just gonna guess. We're gonna make some guesses. I also asked about Series 2. What's going on with the figures that we saw out in London? Are those happening? Are they not? Haven't heard back. I imagine there's probably a lot of they don't know yet. They're probably running the numbers, figuring out what's possible for them. As well as they're going to announce it when they're ready to announce it. They're not going to announce it to a tiny YouTube channel. So we're just here to sort of chat.
I think it's fair to say they may not know either yet.
No, I think it is. I mean, I think from their standpoint, I guess if we break it down, like just the Prodigy line, right, with the rest of those figures, they need to know a lot more about how those figures are going to sell. The ones they've already released. How are they selling? What's going on? But also, does season 2 of Prodigy land somewhere? How readily available is season 1? Because that certainly matters in terms of whether they can anticipate further sales on the rest of the line.
Yeah,
as well as the ship and the phaser, which were announced.
Yeah, well, also you have to think, a lot of decisions are being made agilely in Paramount, and depending on investor calls and depending on where they're deciding to spend their resources, and those conversations and decisions, though having a ton of ramifications, seem like they're fluid, if you know what I mean. And from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, pretty sure Playmates is not a direct arm of Paramount. They are
no. Playmates is a separate
a company that owns the license or has the license and is working closely with Paramount. But I'm guaranteeing that the decisions being made at the upper echelon of Paramount, they don't have somebody at Playmates on the horn, right?
Oh, no, Paramount couldn't care less.
Yes, correct.
About
so there's whatever scrambling is taking place at Paramount. I can only imagine the chicken with the head cut off taking place in Playmates.
Well, and I wonder, did Playmates have a warning, a heads up on this? Is that why the Janeway figure got delayed?
They definitely yes. There's a little force. They are hearing things before we are.
I would hope so. I mean, because if not, it is a mystery.
I wouldn't be shocked to. I don't think it's that insightful of a speculation. That day where we all got those emails that said your Janeway is canceled, someone got a phone call that day or the day before.
I would think. It's really interesting, and the reality is we have no idea.
No.
And so I certainly hope they're able to. I hope Prodigy finds a place to live. I hope that it is able to air season 2. And then one of the good things about animation, right, is you can pick this up in 10 years right where you left off.
Yeah, that's happened a lot.
You're not dealing with cast members aging or having to rebuild the sets. It's all there. It's all the assets, and it's all on a hard drive somewhere. So there is a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more fluidity with what you can do with animation. So, I mean, how many times did like Star Wars, Clone Wars get canceled and uncanceled?
Legend of Korra, like a lot of that stuff. What was the one? Avatar, and they reboot them, and there's a new there was a new Voltron, and so yes, you're absolutely right. And kids aren't particularly sticklers for the established timeline and lore of a particular property. They're happy to jump right in.
I mean, I was, but yes, no. So I think it's and so I thought it might be interesting to sort of check in and look at what was going on the first time Playmates launched their toys versus what's happening now. And I think there are some things about it that I think are a little concerning, and there's some parts that are maybe give a little bit of hope for how the line is going and where it's going to go. So if you look here, this is one of the very early ads, well before the figures themselves were released, and you can see what's coming. They haven't even announced all of Series 1. They did release 10 figures in Series 1. This is 1992. And cool, in this picture here, I'm pointing at a screen you can't see. Great. You can see the box design is still in the prototype phase for the Picard figure. So they had the Picard and a Ferengi up there. And I don't think Q ended up until Series 2, if I'm correct. But you can see, if you go forward, we can see what did come out in 1992 in their first series, which was a total of, they did not put Q in yet. They replaced it with Gowron, I think, from what they said on the ad there. So in Series 1, they put out 10 figures and 2 ships, right? So here are the 10 figures they put out, which compares to 2023, not that far off. Because or 2022, that is, they put out 7 standard figures and 4 Prodigy figures. So it really wasn't that far off. You can see the ships they put out in 1992. They put out the Enterprise D. They also put out the phaser and the communicator. Okay. So it was a little bit bigger than it was back in than it was today, but not giant different in the scale, because we also got a ship, we got a phaser, we got a ship and a prop, and we got And we got 11 figures if you count the Prodigy figures in 2022, or is that 2023? They were announced as part of the 2022 line. So the scale of 1992 versus 2022 are roughly the same. So I think that, okay, so everyone thought like Playmates came in dipping their toes. Well, they did too in when they first launched in 1992.
You know, you can see in that first shot too, they were launching alongside another the Ninja Turtles. Now, what's interesting to me is that Ninja Turtles line basically has never stopped since then. They've basically been going strong for about 30 years, just like cranking out new stuff with radically different designs. I guess when kids just are, I wonder if kids are still tied to the Turtles property as tightly as they were back in the 90s, or if it's just the toys are cool.
Well, I don't. It's tough to say because the Turtles has also put out has changed a lot. They put out like the sort of like CG movies. They put out what 3 of the regular Turtles movies in the 90s. Then they put out 2 of the CG ones, I think. So I mean, Star Trek has 2. But I think for Playmates, Turtles was a bigger line, at least after the original 90s line. So it's tough to say. I think where we have a big departure from what we're going on now is that obviously the 1992 Playmates line was very successful because they didn't just continue in 1993, they exploded. So they went from 10 figures, and here's one of the ads they put out for Series 2. Great ad, by the way.
Yeah, really good.
I think that's a phenomenal ad. It's really cool. Looks great. Would make me very excited. Like, it's a poster I'd have on my wall, actually. But they went out with 23 figures in Series 2 in 1993. So
how quickly did Next Gen become a hit?
Next Gen, I'd say Next Gen wasn't really a hit until Season 3.
Okay.
I mean, I think it should be like 89, 90.
It was a hit enough that they're blowing out the toy line because clearly the Gen 1 was selling.
Well, but by the time the toy started in 92, Next Gen was in Season 6.
Oh, so it was already a hit at that
point. So Next Gen was already a hit at this point. So these toys were sort of catching up with that. So go forward one and you can see all the figures they put out in Series 2. They also, in 1993, put out the original series Bridge set.
That's cool.
So really, it was 30 figures they put out the next year after 92. I don't think we're getting anywhere close to that in 2023, if we get any more at all. So it's tough to say. They also put out 3 different ships. They put out the Klingon attack cruiser. They put out this one, I don't think I've ever seen in the wild. It was a glider.
Oh, that's cool.
An Enterprise glider. Does anybody have one of these? I'd love to see one. I didn't even know this existed. This is from our good friends at Wixaban.com. I have the other ones, but I've never seen the glider in the wild. Probably because it was made out of styrofoam and everyone turned into dust by now. But clearly, it came out a much larger line. So here we see the 2022 line of figures with the 8 figures. Oh, 8 figures. Yeah. Math. Yes. That they put out in 2022.
And they have the new paint jobs featured here.
And the new paint jobs. Yep. Which I think is an interesting thing to talk about because I think we should. So now that we know what happened in the 90s, I think let's talk about what we think is coming. I think the fact that they did release the new paint jobs on the 2022 figures, which if you haven't seen in a previous video, if you go to your Target now, you're going to see that the figures look different because as opposed to, I think that UV paint they were doing on the faces, which did not look that good, they've redone it and repainted the figures for the next line of release, which I think undeniably look a lot better than the first releases. So they're obviously still investing right, in adapting and fixing these figures. If they didn't think that, if the line were dead, I don't think they would do that. I don't think there would be any point in going back and fixing some of these figures. So clearly, they haven't packed it up. They haven't packed it in yet.
No, I think they're probably waiting word, and I'm sure they're, so a lot. Here's an interesting thing: the Turtles, as we were talking about their popularity over and continuing to push out new toys over the years, is part, I think, attributed to the fact that because it's animation and because it's comic book style, there's a lot of, they can cross IP. A lot of the things you see released are Turtles meets this, Turtles meets
They
that.
did Star Trek Turtles.
Yeah, and Star Trek does less of that, I think, because they're more human-based kind of.
Well, they have their own universe, and they're not crossing over with Marvel.
Right. So my guess is that we're not going to see, I don't think they're going to take wild chances. I also, anecdotally, we've noted on the show that we're not seeing the 2023s, 2022s fly off the shelves. I still go into my Target, my Walmart, and I just see the same toys sitting there. And so what I would like to see, what I think, I don't know the business behind it, but maybe they should do what a lot of us had hoped in the beginning, is kind of pivot towards back to the legacy collector market, and continue on with your cons or your movies or your special collections or your just because Keith, because they know that's established. They know that that's a market that will buy, right? Whereas as kids, it's tough to say because we're pulling stuff off. Or maybe we see them do exactly what we're going to do next week and hone in on the properties that were successful. Show us a Picard line. Show us a more disco figures. Show us what's the other one?
Strange New
Worlds that we're doing.
The one we review every week.
There's some that now after 2 seasons, I think there's enough characters and probably that they could do some stuff. So that's really the only hope direction I think they can go. Is one of those two forks in the road. Maybe both.
Well, I mean, obviously. I mean, I think, well, there is no animated series anymore, so other than Lower Decks, and I don't know how you represent that as a figure. I'm sure, like, they've thought it through.
But that's not a show. That's not a show as marketed to children.
No, it's not really for children.
Yeah.
But these legacy toys, like, does a 10-year-old want a Captain Picard figure? I don't know.
But that's what I'm saying. If there's no kids, there's no kids shows. So they can't make kid toys. So like we said, if they're going to focus on us, I think they should pivot to just like a full-on online assault for these toys.
Well, and I online, I think that's the next thing I was going to get to. That I think that's exactly right. I think the reality of things is toys is like having seen some Shark Tank episodes, the toy market is brutal and brutally competitive, and the most difficult thing to get is shelf space. And we've talked about it before. I'm not sure that they're, especially if they're going to find out that mostly adults buying this. I'm not sure what the point in doing retail at all is, right? Because the margins are garbage compared to what the online margins can be for them. If were I them, right, I would expand the line, but make it online only, right, and direct to consumer. Like Playmates should build out should be shipping, and that way you have margins that are remarkably higher than retailing it out. Especially, by the time you're at Target, they're only selling the figures for $13. They're probably making 75 cents a figure. Right, so they need to sell 1 trillion of them to recoup their costs. Well, if they're selling it for, $12.99 online, maybe their margins are like 50-60%. Then you can make, I don't know anything, right? I know nothing about business. I know nothing about this. So I have no idea what the obstacles are really for Playmates to do that. But it feels like retail. They're not a big enough company to really compete retail with some of the bigger companies. And so that's why these figures are sort of being put haphazardly in the stores and random places. And I'm sure it can't be helping their sales. So online sales feels like it's where to go.
I also think that you could take a huge part of this, let's call it like amusement budget, and maybe develop some sort of a, like, let's get into the video game universe, right? You get like one of those, like a game that is an MMO type of thing where you get that continually regenerating revenue. It's just such a universe rife for that type of experience, and I feel like, whereas
how do you do that with a toy though, with a physical toy?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, let's pivot to digital. Well, I guess Playmates can't. That's not Playmates.
No, I mean the whole point of Playmates is to continue the '90s line,
right.
And like, if that is the point, and it seems like that's what they're trying to do, by keeping it the same scale with these retro packaging, they're going to us, the people who are the two of us, and the people watching this show.
Yeah.
That is your core customer.
Because Paramount's still giving out the license, right? So because you see it in sort of so if they want to go to the more like McFarlane type collecting, then they're going to go somewhere else, right? A more niche company.
There's already people doing that.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm Playmates, you know what? Give us exactly what we want. Yeah. The 90s style, go back to the varnish sculpts. You know, and at this point, I say, like, forget the new articulation. Get us back exactly 90s style and put out, you know, as cheaply as you can, put out as many different figures as you can, sell them online only so that we're all buying 10 of them. Forget Walmart, forget Target. Screw all that. That's not where the money is. Do it online.
Especially if you're not going to do it, you know, you're going to half-ass it, because there's no marketing, there's no shelf space. They're always kind of tucked away in a different corner. Like, there's no Star Wars universe, Star Trek universe branding.
I mean, they can't financially compete with Star Wars. And so, but online you can. You know, like, our community is so voracious, and we talk, you know, like, it's we're going to know. It's not going to take a huge amount to market. Just send them to us. We'll put them out there. People will see it. That's, you know, again, do we know anything? No, we don't know anything about business. We're in musical theater. Clearly, we know nothing about business.
Well, you wonder too, right? Just to throw more questions out there. Does some of the bad taste, the Save Prodigy, some of the bad taste of some of these business decisions on Paramount's part trickle over to the consumer of the toys? Does that bad will eat some of Playmates' lunch?
Well, it really depends on how Playmates handles it. I mean, honestly, I get people reaching out to me and feedback, like communication with other fans and other people who do what we do, really wishing that Playmates were a little bit more transparent, were a little bit more proactive in their communications, a little bit more open about what their plans are and listening to feedback. And they've been pretty walled off. And I understand it from the standpoint of, like, we want to release things the way we release them. We want to communicate the way we communicate. We want to whatever. But again, giving unsolicited advice, business advice from a musical theater writer, I don't know anything. But if it's me, right? If I'm running this company and I know that this business is based on the rabid fans, the nostalgic fans, you're an underdog. Playmates Toys is a small toy company. It's not Mattel. They're not good. It's not Marvel. It's not Star Wars. Star Trek is an underdog IP compared to a lot of the other things. Be the underdog. Be the scrappy underdog that you root for. Be upfront. Communicate. Ask us what we want, and like, just be transparent. Be open. Tell us what's going on, even if it's bad news. So, like, hey, we're not making money retail. What if we do this? What if we do that? Be the underdog that we're all rooting for. Build the goodwill through transparency. So just
to here are the licenses Playmates Toys currently has.
Yeah.
I'm speaking of being a little more niche than I remember. I guess I remember them as a bigger player, but it's true. Star Trek, Spy Ninjas, couldn't even tell you what that is. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Right.
Miraculous Ladybug. That seems preschool type. Monsterverse. Don't know what that is. And Toho series classic Godzilla and King Kong. That's it.
Yeah. And I think like pretending, like acting like you're Mattel, acting like you're one of the big things, I don't think that's helping you. I think that's setting people's expectations different than what you can actually play off. But if you're like, hey, we're a small company, we're a legacy company, we're trying to do this. Here's our challenges, here's our obstacles, and just like be who you are. The scrappy underdog trying to like capitalize on this nostalgia from the 90s. I think you can get that goodwill. And I think that will make a big difference as opposed to trying to pretend that you're bigger than you are. So again,
either way, it does suck. I mean, it sucks. It sucks for them.
It's a really difficult position for them, and I think the reason people aren't being as understanding of that and rooting for them is that they're sort of like pretending like they're the big dog in the fight here, and they're not. And people are getting frustrated with their lack of transparency, frustrated with their walling off information and not being super responsive. I say do the opposite, and you will turn people's goodwill, and people will start rooting for you as opposed to being frustrated by you.
It is interesting that they haven't scrubbed the ship or Janeway from the website yet.
Right.
Still there, coming soon. It says.
And I don't know, and the thing is like, okay, so it might not come, but I think if I'm your PR team, I'll be like, yeah, it might not come. You know what? It didn't work. We're not making money on that. Like, maybe we'll get to it. Maybe we'll do it some other way. But like, here's the deal: we're 5% of the market versus whatever retail's killing us. What if we do this? Mm-hmm. So I don't know, and maybe all of that is completely wrong. Right? We are utterly just speculating here. So I don't pretend to know literally anything. I'm just talking out of my ass. But
I think it's clear we're rooting. I'm rooting for them. You're
1,000,000%. 1,000,000%.
It's just, it's tough. Not probably. It's tough being in this landscape for any company. The media companies, especially with all the consolidation and then the walled gardens and the pulling stuff and the decisions being made so quickly, being one of these legacy type companies, a toy company where, manufacturing pipeline is long and hard. So it's tough to be having to deal with that. And, like you said, the best learn how to pivot, and we'll see. Yeah. See how they do it.
And it's like I think the media companies are exactly that, right? If you're, scrappy, weird, streaming platform that nobody's ever heard of, but you've got this really cool niche, like let's say you're Shudder, mm-hmm. right? Like we specialize in like old horror movies from the 70s that most everybody's never even heard of, but there's some hardcore fans who really want to see that weird old horror film. Mm-hmm. Well, they come out like, hey, we're the scrappy weirdos, help us out because we're trying to provide you weirdos with what you want, as opposed to like Bigfooting pretending like we're CBS. Yeah. Well, you're not CBS, right? You're Shudder, and that's great. And we're going to root for you because you're showing me that, I really want to see that weird movie. And maybe they need to move in that direction.
Hey, Keith, before we wrap up this conversation, speaking of small, scrappy, niche little companies, and how you can support those, we should talk about how you can support us. Keith, you want to go for it?
Yes, indeed. You can support the K&M Empire at patreon.com/K&M. Spell out that and. It's right there on the screen where you can get, oh my God, the amount of bonus nonsense you can get. We just recorded and live us watching Star Trek 5 with the patrons in chat. We had a phenomenal time. Mm-hmm. You could have seen it live, but you can also watch the recorded version of it at patreon.com/K&M, as well as Mike watching Deep Space Nine, Mike watching Strange New Worlds. We do bonus episodes. We do AMA. We do all sorts of super crazy video game stuff. Mike, who's doing it?
Keith. Our good buddies. Bryant, Campbell Beersog, Wyatt Eldridge, Casey Clark, Jason Moe, Andrew Hayes, Jorge Naveau, and the Mysterious Household Dwarfs, Big Ol' Boot Shivs, Charles Babbage, Richard Coleman, CRM Productions, Nikolay Ivanovich Lobachevsky, Delusions at Noon, our newest friend. Welcome to the family.
Welcome to the family.
Good. It's Steve Brown. DJ Makes, JD Makes, Colin Dagan, Chris Mitchell,
DJ
CRM.
Makes.
DJ JD Makes, wicka, 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 wicka,
No. That's all bad.
I'm so sorry I did that.
DJ from Full House. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
New Full House podcast coming out in July. I'm excited about it. Not from us. Dave Cooley is
No,
doing it.
no more.
Those are the people that send us stuff in the mail, as you can here at your customs, your this, your that's. Feel free to do so. But more importantly, you produce the show that keeps on giving. Patreon.com/K&M.
In the 90s, Playmates.
You get that kind of world-class broadcasting.
My goodness. Yes. Well, thank you for watching us just talking and speculating.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what you think. What do you think about the future of the Playmates line? What are your wild speculation and guesses that you have absolutely no basis?
Or maybe you do know something.
Maybe you do know something.
Unsubstantiated leaks, we'll take them.
Ooh, yeah. Just pop it in the comments below. Like I said, we have questions out to Playmates. When we hear back, we will come back and do an emergency video. Don't you worry. We will get you as much information as we have as fast as we have it. But next week, you can look forward. Mike, do you know we're going to do not one, not two, but 3-part
It's all about trilogies
series.
These days, Keith. Extended universes and trilogies.
Exactly. We're doing an entire trilogy on custom figures from Star Trek Picard. We haven't done a lot of Picard figures, so get ready. The rest of the month is all gonna be custom Picard figures. We will see you then next week.
It's Picard Christmas in July, Keith.
It sure is. Till then, this has been Look at My Star Trek Toys. Whoosh.